Warm greetings from the high 10. It is Everyday Shenanigans. Fox News is the source. Idaho police likely using investigative genealogy in college students' murders, expert says. Police have not named a suspect in the quadruple homicide near the University of Idaho. As the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students enters its 4th week, law enforcement is likely now trying to identify the killer through investigative genealogy, a novel field that combines cutting-edge DNA analysis with traditional genealogical research. Authorities collected 113 pieces of physical evidence at the scene for testing by Idaho State Police Forensic Services, which have been working 24/7 in the lab to try to get results as quickly as possible. Investigators typically will first compare unknown DNA samples from the crime scene to the FBI's Combined DNA Index System, CODIS, a database that contains genetic samples of known offenders using traditional STR-DNA analysis. It's pretty quick to compare against CODIS. Had they gotten a match, I think they probably would have arrested by now, so I think we can assume that they are at least looking at using investigative genealogy. C.C. Moore, the chief genetic genealogist at Parabon Nano Labs, told Fox News Digital. It just depends on how quickly they learn they didn't have a match in CODIS as to when that would have been done. If the traditional STR-DNA analysis doesn't come up with a match in CODIS, then investigators can analyze more than 500,000 DNA single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs, to identify possible distinct relatives of the unknown suspects. Very interesting. Genetic genealogists can then reverse engineer the unknown person's family tree using traditional genealogy and narrow it down to a potential suspect. Once law enforcement has identified a suspect using genetic genealogy, it will generally try to secretly obtain a fresh DNA sample to confirm a lead. For instance, investigators recently took a new look at the 1975 cold case of a 19-year-old Lindy Sue Beechler in Pennsylvania using genetic genealogy. Male DNA was obtained from Beechler's underwear, but did not receive a hit in the CODIS for decades. Moore and her team at Parabon Labs used genetic genealogy to analyze the DNA taken from the crime scene and develop 68-year-old David Sinopoli as the suspect. Investigators stealthily obtained fresh DNA from a coffee cup that Sinopoli threw in the trash in February, and it came back as a match for DNA taken from the crime scene. Sinopoli was arrested and is now facing homicide charges. They also need that extra step of collecting DNA, and it's usually going to be surreptitious because they don't want to tip someone off. Surreptitious, Moore said. Dozens of law enforcement officers from the FBI, Idaho State Police, and Moscow Police Department collected evidence at the off-campus home where Xana Kernodle, 20, Ethan Chapin, 20, Madison Mogan, 21, and Kaylee Gonsalves, 21, were murdered November 13th. Investigators can obtain DNA samples from strands of hair, skin cells, tissue left under the victim's fingernails, but it is likely that the suspect's blood could also have been at the scene. Typically, in cases I've worked with stabbings, if someone stabs enough times, the knife almost always slips, said Moore, who has helped solve more than 200 cold cases with Parabon Labs. You almost always get the perpetrator's DNA mixed in with the victim's DNA. The unsolved murders have left the Moscow community reeling. The university estimates 25 to 40% of students haven't returned to campus since the killings. Moscow Police Chief James Fry on Tuesday pledged to solve the murders, saying this case is not going cold. We have tips coming in. We have investigators out every day interviewing people. We're still reviewing evidence. We're still looking at all aspects of this, Fry told Fox News. I said early on that no stone will go unturned, and I meant that. FoxNews.com is the source of this information. Uploaded December 8th. Interesting how they want to use this genealogy to help. And I've heard of this working in some cases. And And I think it's a very interesting technique. So let's pray that the perpetrator left DNA under the fingernails of the victims, because it has been said by the coroner that some of them fought back. Fibers, hair, found at the scene on the persons, the decedents. And perhaps he did cut himself, because that is a known issue with people who stab others, especially multiple times, vigorously stabbing the victim. He or she will cut himself or herself. So that would be interesting to find out if a third DNA is mixed in with each victim. Because you have to ask yourself, did he wipe the knife off after each stabbing? Or walk through the house with a bloody knife and went to the next victim and stabbed the next person? Because I didn't think about that until listening to this commentary here. So imagine going from person to person, stabbing them, never wiping off the knife. That's going to be a mess, of course. But imagine all that DNA mixed in. Each victim's DNA mixed in, plus the perpetrator's DNA. What has come back from the lab? Because evidence has come back, but naturally, law enforcement has not revealed to the general public what they've gotten back. So we're going to pray on pings on cell phones from the victims. Any place they went, fraternized, searches on their phone, people they've held conversations with, anything that seemed negative that could be a cause for motive in the deaths of these young people. And many people have also been talking about Wi-Fi. If the perpetrator took his or her phone there, it would show in their phone. But naturally, you have to have a perpetrator in order to search their phone to see different places that pinged off their phone. Any pings on their phone. So did the perpetrator take a phone? That's another thing. How did he travel? By foot, walked, drove, caught a ride, what? Did he tell anybody? Does anybody suspect the perpetrators? Did he use one knife? Any other weapons? We heard that one victim, Miss Gonsalves, had more substantial wounds. Exactly where did she have more substantial wounds? Is it because she also fought back? Did she fight back? Did she fight the perpetrator back? Because this can also cause a lot of wounds to the body in trying to preserve life. A harrowing tale to think of these four individuals minding their business, staying to themselves, out on the town that night, to only come home to die viciously in their home, and one visitor, Mr. Ethan Chapin, visiting his girlfriend, Xana. But nonetheless, it's a horrible death. It is a death I do not wish on anyone, because one would ask themselves, what did these kids do so terrible to end up in this predicament? I do not know. But I'm praying that this genealogy will help, because how interesting will that be that someone in this perpetrator's family has committed a crime? Perhaps they're in the CODIS. That would be a luck of the draw. That someone related to this thing, this monster, also has a family members who have been incarcerated, had their DNA taken, and also in the CODIS database. This will be a wonderful, wonderful find. So hopefully he has family members that are also in the database. Let's pray that he does. But let's also pray that he left something behind. Because with true crime, there's always something left behind by the perpetrator. Who knows if he dropped something that could have a print. And naturally, if he doesn't have a criminal record, it won't hit a match either. But who's to say? Many criminals have left things behind at the scene of a crime. ID, a pen, something personal. Could be a lighter, could be a pocket watch, could be anything. And their printer on it. They don't get a match yet because the person hasn't committed a crime to match the fingerprints. But you never know. And imagine if he did leave something behind. He's wondering, oh my goodness, I can't find my this or that. Oh, I must have dropped it at the scene of the crime. Inside of the house, outside of the house, walking to the house, however he got there, don't know. Lots of evidence. You hear in this commentary, they Over 100 pieces of evidence brought in from this home to analyze. What were those items? What did they take from the scene to analyze? As you know, the house has been cleared out. Belongings being returned to the family members. Some think this was a good idea, some do not. Because agents have been back there searching since items have been removed of the children. So one could say, why not clear the whole house out and then go back in to look for evidence? But they have their techniques and their reasons for how they do things. I don't know the protocol. But they have been back agents looking around in the rooms, upstairs rooms, for something. What are they looking for? What have they found? What have they gathered? More matter, fluids, fingerprints, handprints, hair. Did they vacuum any of the rooms to try to pull up any type of DNA? Because naturally you do shed hair. Is the person bald, short hair, long hair, medium length? What color is their hair? Did they wear gloves, latex, knit, leather? Shoes they wore. Did they leave a print? What size is the shoe print? Killing 4 people would be very bloody, very messy. Did he leave a footprint going and coming? And I'm assuming his footprints would show who was first and who was last, and how he also exited out. Because then you'd have to ask, did he clean up? Bring all types of clothing, shirt, pants, shoes, to change out of, as not to show how he left out. Was he that clever to bring change of clothes and shoes as not to show how he walked out? How did he enter? Glass sliding doors, second and third level, or the front entry? Allegation that the front door was open about 8:30 a.m. by a neighbor. Is that allegation true? So many questions to why this happened to these 4 individuals. Why were they bludgeoned to death? What could they have done so terrible to exact such hate, contempt? Who was the target? 1 or all? 2 or all? 3 or all? Does it matter? Because in the end, there was no kill these kids. So it doesn't matter who was the alleged target. And the sad thing will be these parents feeling like if one was the target, then they will be the cause of their children being killed. Because you know, a person goes through a lot in grieving for their loved one. And that sometimes people do need someone to blame. Hopefully that won't happen in this situation, because the person who did the killing had no right to kill any of these kids, no matter if some were collateral damage or not, or viewed as eyewitnesses. It was wrong to go up in that house and take the lives of these kids. Prayers to the families and justice for all of them. And it is a scary time in this town for the students and the town people. And a young lady by the name of Katarina wrote an essay about how fearful she is, not knowing who the killer is. They're free. And how do you go back to living a normal life after knowing students were murdered? That would be very hard. And as I said, I don't think many people understand what it's like to be a student at a university where kids were killed, and you still have to try to go back to it the way things were. How do you go back? I think would be very hard. But as the chief, not the chief, but the captain said, you need to be aware of your surroundings. Don't walk in dark places. Don't walk alone as a female. Go in groups. Always keep your head up when walking. You need to live this way all the time, whether there is a murder or not. And that is true. And a lot of us become very comfortable in our daily existence. And it can cost you your life, sadly. Because who's walking around thinking they're going to be murdered in their own home? You don't want to believe you'll be killed, period. Outside of your home or inside. But your home is sacred. And unfortunately for these 4 young people, home was not sacred. What is the evidence left behind by the killer? What have the agents gathered in this crime? Have any pings come back from cell phones of the victims? More CCTV footage around the town, because that was mentioned, that they are gathering all video surveillance of the children's whereabouts, and that will take a lot of work because you're talking about 4 different individuals. They probably have been going to a lot of places that day, but praying people will offer up any information and video footage of these kids coming and going. And hopefully someone will give viable information to help solve these crimes. I want to thank you all so much for joining me. God bless all of you. Stay safe. Happy holidays. Thank you for your support. New subscribers, viewers, old ones. Just please be aware of your surroundings. It's holiday season. And remember, if you see something, say something. Be a part of the solution and not the problem. Mind the children and know that one phone call could possibly save a life. I will be back with more commentary tomorrow. So please join me. Look out for the notification. And I will see you all the next time on Everyday Shenanigans.